Hi, my name is Professor Yanofsky, and I'm giving this talk called How Turing Broke the Enigma. Okay, so this is Alan Turing. So where can I go? This is Alan Turing. He's called the father of computer science, and he did some amazing things in computer science, and we'll talk about it in a second. So he was born in England, went to Cambridge, got his PhD in Princeton. He actually came to America to get his PhD, working on what is a computation. We deal with this in our class on theoretical computer science. We deal with the halting problem and Turing's type of thing. You could just leave it centered, and I'll walk in and out.
Okay.
So just leave it.
Completely out.
I'm good now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. He proved that no computer can solve the halting problem. This is in the 1930s. If you want to see more about this, you have to read this wonderful book, The Outer Limits of Reason, What Science and Mathematics and Logic Cannot Tell Us, by Mike Chris. Anyways, so we go through there, we go through the proof of the halting problem. So this is what he did in the 30s. But in the 40s, so it's an amazing thing, it's an amazing thing, because he was a mathematician who figured out what computers cannot do long before people made computers. So that's a shocking thing. But then came the war, World War II, and he was helpful in breaking the Enigma. The Enigma was a machine that Germans used to communicate with each other in secret, and he was very helpful in breaking that so that the Allies were able to see what the Germans were planning on doing and what they weren't planning on doing. It's part of our culture. This breaking of the Enigma is actually part of our culture, and there are at least 3 movies. This one came out recently, The Imitation Game. It's a very good movie, and it talks about it. So what I'd like to show you is what exactly he did in order to break the Enigma, how he broke the Enigma. So that's what it's all about. So in order to do that, we have to do a little bit of cryptography, not too much, and we'll use it. So one of the things that cryptography does is, the thing that cryptography does is, it takes letters and it puts in other letters, okay, different letters. So this is called the plaintext, this is called the ciphertext. You change one letter for another letter. This is a typical way of encoding secret messages. It goes back to Julius Caesar, actually. Okay, this is a very old and very solvable. But the problem with this method is it's easily broken. Okay, if you change letters for another letter, it's easily broken. Okay, you can easily tell what it is. And the way you do it is something called frequency analysis. And what is frequency analysis? Okay. Let's talk about breaking English. Assume the code is given in English. Well, the letters in English show up at a certain frequency. For example, the letter E is the most common letter. The letter T is a very common letter. The letter, Z is very uncommon. The letter Q doesn't show up that often, although it shows up more often than Z. So these tell you how much the letters come in, how frequent the letter is, what frequency the letters have. And they have a lot more data about this than just frequencies. For example, pairs of letters. TH is a very common pair of letters that shows up. Another thing, whenever there's a Q, there has to be a U afterwards. So if we're going to substitute a letter Q for something else, and we're going to substitute U for something else, we're going to be able to figure out what the letters are. So here's what you could do to break a code. If you see a certain code, you can figure out the frequencies of the letters of the code. Okay? And then you can say, oh look, this is very common. This is less common. So this must be an E. Maybe this is an E. Oh wow, this is very uncommon. That's a Z. Oh, this letter shows up after that letter. Maybe that's a Q and a U. Oh, this shows up, TH shows up. Maybe that's TH. Maybe this shows up very low. So this frequency analysis using statistics to break codes is very, very common, easy, etc., etc. I have a book here. It was actually first printed in the 30s. Cryptoanalysis, the studies of ciphers and solutions. It's a very cute book, and it has all these different ciphers that were used and shows you how they're broken and things like that. Okay, good. Now, again, this type of cipher, substitution cipher, change one letter for another letter, has been around for almost 2,000 years, and people have varied the methods to get different ciphers. So here's one thing you can do. This is the plain text, this is the letters you're using. You might want to change every other letter. For example, you want to write the word boy, so first letter is going to change B, it's going to change to a J. The second letter, you're going to look up O, and you can see what to change that. But if you're going to use this second thing, you're going to alternate which ones to use. Sometimes you're going to use this, the next time you're going to use this, change, and the next time you're going to use this. And you can do every single letter into one of those things. Okay? When using this, alternate which cipher to use. This will mess up the frequency analysis. Because sometimes the letter M is going to stand for C, and sometimes the letter M is going to stand for A. So you're going to mess up the frequency analysis. But it's not so bad, okay? Because what you can do is you can get out two frequency analysis, and you can analyze both of them, and you can get out interesting information. There are many similar tricks. This book talks about many similar tricks. Here's something called Wigner cipher. I don't know how to pronounce it properly. Okay, but basically what it says is start someplace, use this. Those are the letters you're using. Use this, then use this, then use this. Keep on changing the ciphers over and over and over. Okay, all of them can be broken using statistical analysis, frequency analysis. Here's just a little bit of a side issue. Okay. This is called linear B tablets. This is writing that was found in Crete and Greece for the past 200 years. The writing these were found in Crete and mainland Greece. They were written between 1450 and 1100 BC, so they're between 3,000 and 4,000 years old, these writings. Okay? No one knew what they were. Did the symbols represent ideas? Did the symbols represent letters? Did they represent sounds? No one knew for the past 2,000 years what those symbols represented. Okay? And so there were literally thousands and thousands of these tablets with these different scribbles on them, with these different symbols, and no one knew if they corresponded to a language that was spoken then or corresponded to a language spoken now, etc., etc. There was one person who was finally solved in the 1940s, almost single-handedly by one person. And she basically did a lot of frequency analysis and understanding of how they worked, etc., etc. She made a lot of good guesses and then saw that her guesses was right. Her name was Alice E. Cover. Okay? She worked in the 40s, and she basically single-handed this mystery that was there for decades. No one knew what to do with it for decades. It's very interesting where she taught. She did not teach in Harvard. She did not teach in Yale. She did not teach in MIT. She taught in Brooklyn College.
Yeah.
Okay? This is Brooklyn College in the 40s. Notice Roosevelt, but they were supposed to build all around, but they ran out of money during the war, so they didn't build over here. And she taught in the Boylan Hall on the 4th floor. She was a Brooklyn College professor, and she solved this problem. Unfortunately, she died very, very young. She was a massive chain smoker. She died very, very young. But this is Brooklyn College in the 40s. Now, she had, just a little side note, she had a co-worker with her in Brooklyn College in the Modern Languages department. He used to teach Latin and Italian. His name was Salvador Eugene Scalia. That's his wife. They had a child. You know what the child's name is?
Nasty.
Say again?
Nasty.
I'm old, but not that old. Anthony Scalia, that's the chief of one of the justices of the Supreme Court. His father also taught in Boylan Hall.
But he didn't go to Brooklyn College.
He did not go to Brooklyn But that's pretty funny. Okay, let's get back. Okay, we can't spend too much time on cultural whatever. Okay, so I'd like to show you how the Enigma worked. Okay, this is a front view of it. I've seen it in real life. If you go outside the NSA, there's a little museum called the Museum of Cryptography, and they have a copy of this thing. I'd like to show you, I'll explain it again how to do it in a second. But basically, it was a self-standing machine. It wasn't connected to anything. And it goes like this. Let's say you want to write attack at dawn. Okay? What you do is, there's a battery in here. You type in the letters, attack. Type in the letters. Every time you type in a letter, one of these light bulbs are going to light up. Not the same one as you press. You press A, some other letter is going to light up. Okay? You write down what the other letter is. And then you press T, and another letter is going to show up. And then you're going to press the other letter and another letter. Every time you are going to type a letter, write down what's showing, what light shows up. Press another letter and another letter and another letter, and you get to do that. Okay? Okay, then when you have all the things that were lit up, then you send it classically. You send it send it over Morse code or something like that. You can send these letters. What's lit up is how you encode the letter. Now let me show you how it works inside. Let's open it up and look inside. The most important thing are these scramblers or rotors. Okay? They're very cool things. Notice you have letters over here. Okay? And there's little electrical wires, electrical things here. What happens is as follows. Electricity goes in here. It's going to touch there. And there's going to be another scrambler over here, and it's going to touch there. And then there's going to be another scrambler over here, and it's going to touch there. And then that's going to go to the light. So these rotors are going to hit every single one of them. Okay? The electricity is going to go through it. You'll see in a second. Okay? This is taking those scramblers and opening them up. So here's the way it goes. You're going to have the letter F. F is going to be connected, you see this wire? It's going to be connected to L. Okay? Then you're going to have the next scrambler. It's going to connect L to another thing. Then you're going to have the next scrambler. You have 3 scramblers there, and they're going to connect one to the other. Now, let's go back and show you what happens. What happens is as follows. Okay? What happens is, when you first start, you set the scramblers. You see there's 3 of them. Actually, there's 4. I'll talk about that later. There's 3 of them. You set them a certain way. You press a button. Let's say you press the button B. Okay? That's going to put electricity to the B scrambler, this one. And this scrambler is going to wire. It's going to press. The wire's going to come. The electricity is going to go into the B, and it's going to come out of the J. Okay? Then it's going to connect to this scrambler. It's going to come out of the J, okay? And then the J it's going to come out of the T. And then it's going to come to this scrambler. It's going to go in by the T, and it's going to come out by the F. Okay? And what's going to happen is when you press B, F is going to light up. That's what's going to be sent. So you're substituting B for F. But here's what the shocking thing is. After you press the B, the scramblers change. This scrambler moves. So here we saw a T goes to E, or a T goes to F. It's going to change, and the wires, the electricity is not going to come in on the T anymore. It's going to come into the U, and the U is going to give out, it's going to be connected to the Z. So the next time you press B, if you press B again, it's going to change this scrambler. It's not going to put back the same letter. That's the key point. You press B the first time, and out is going to come F, and you press B a second time, and out is going to come a Z. Okay? So every single letter is going to change. The scramblers are going to change what's going to go. It's going to spin around like that and keep on changing every single letter. And guess what? When this changes 26 times, all the letters, then the next scramble is going to change, and the next scramble is going to change. So every time you press a letter, you're going to get a whole different cipher, change. Okay? Every single letter is going to change. So if you press BB, you're going to get F and then Z. If you press BA, you're going to get something, and then if you press BA again, you're going to get something totally different every time you do that. Okay? So that's an interesting thing. Now here's the way it looks without the scramblers. Okay, you put the scramblers in here, 1, 2, 3, and here's the electricity coming in. Here's the electricity coming out, and the light bulbs are going to be someplace like that. Okay, so this explains how it works. This is, again, another picture of the scramblers instead of having numbers. Okay, just to make things even more complicated, okay, there are these wires. And say, look, you manually connect the wires. You say, okay, I want to connect F to L. I want to connect, that's the red wire. The blue wire is Y to, I don't know, that's Y to L, F to M, or something like that. And what that says is, here, even besides scrambling the letters, I want to, every time I press F, I want to change, every time I press F, I want to swap it with M. So when I press F, I'm really pressing M. The electricity is going to go through the M. Now, what the user, I'll show you how this was used in a second, but basically these wires can be stuck in any two ways and they give another permutation. Hold on, don't move. Okay, so here's a typical way of looking at it totally. You ready? I press B. The B is going to go into the B. Okay, whatever that means. It has 3 rotors. The B is going to go to the C. The C is going to go to the electricity, is going to go to the F. This is what scrambles. C goes to F, E goes to J, L goes to wherever. They scramble again. Okay? F goes to E, E goes to S. This is the second scrambler. S goes to S, that's a shocking thing. And then there's going to be like a mirror that switches them back and sends them all back. You press B and A is going to shine out. It's kind of like that. The point is it goes around and it comes back to some other letter. Okay? But the main point is these scramblers change every time you press a letter. Now let's do some analysis. Okay? You ready? You have these 3 rotors, these 3 scramblers, 1, 2, and 3. They separate. You can put them in any order you want. Okay? So there are 3 rotors. You can put them in order into the computer. You, the German guy, can put them in order 2, 2, 3, 1, 3, 2, 1, 1, 3, 2, There are 6 possibilities of the order of the scramblers. Okay? 3 factorial, 6 possibilities. Okay, once you do that, then you have to say, okay, I'm starting a message. Okay, so you have to write down, you have to decide where to start the scramblers. Should I have the scrambler like this, like this, like this, like this? Each one of the 3 scramblers can be in one of 26 positions as my starting place. So there are, you could start with QYC. That means on top of the machine, there's going to be the letter Q, there's going to be the letter Y, there's going to be the letter C. Notice, you press one button, it's going to change from C to D. QYC is going to go to QYD, it's going to go to QYE, it's going to go around, then it's going to change the Y to a Z, and then the Z to an A, it's going to go around and around. Okay, so there are 26 by 26 by 26 possibilities of each one of the scramblers. Let's go through this again. You have 6 possibilities of how to put the scrambler in. Then you turn it the correct way. Then, that's 26 times 26 times 26 possibilities. So that's 17,000 possibilities. 17,000 different ways of having a scrambler. Hold on. Then you can connect the plugs. I showed you each one of those plugs alternates different letters. There are usually 12 plugs or something like that. Anyways, it turns out that's 100 billion different possibilities of how the things can be. 100 billion possibilities. Okay? So the Enigma was pretty much unbreakable. I'm going to show you how a German was sending messages using this. But it's more important, not only does the German have to be able to send the messages, but somebody reading the messages has to be able to decipher it. And so I'll show you what happens there. Okay, how to send a message. Ready? Look up the secret daily code. The Germans changed the code every single day. Okay? Everybody was sending their messages, or they're sending messages to each other. They had to change the code every single day. Okay. So, the daily code, you would look up, you'd say, oh, September 17th, 1941. Look up the daily code. It would tell you which one of the 3 scramblers to put. Put in the first place, put scrambler 2. In the second place, put scrambler 1. In the third place, put scrambler 3. So they put the scramblers in the right place. Then they would tell you where to start the scramblers, because it's not only in what order, but you also want to have them what letters to start it off. So you would say, it would say QYC. So you read from left, QYC, you put it in that order. Okay? And then it would tell you which plugs. So plug in the plugs to make it even more complicated. So those 3 pieces of information every single person had. And the German army used to send out these calendars which told everybody to put everybody on the same page. That's what they did. And the German government, the Nazis told everybody, look, the most important thing is if they attack you, the first thing you do, burn the calendars. Right? Burn the calendars. Okay? Because if the calendars got into the Allies' hands, the Allies would be able to read the next month, or the next 2 months, or the next 3 months, they would be able to read how they do it. Okay, so that was the first thing. Okay, so here's how to do. So first you put the scramblers in the right order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's 6 possibilities. Put the scramblers correctly, plug in the plugs correctly, press a key, see which light goes on, send that letter by radio waves. Morse code, radio waves, whatever, and the Germans were communicating with U-boats, they were communicating with each other, etc., etc. Go back to step 1. Do it again and again. And again, every time you press the key, the scramblers move, and you're changing the real code. So there's no frequency analysis possible here. Why? Because it's not one code. Because I press B, I get out F. I press B again, I get out Z. There's no way in the world you can do frequency analysis with this. Okay? Great. Let's just see how somebody reading it would do. How to receive a message. Very simple. Look up the secret daily key. You go to your handy-dandy German calendar, open to that day, okay? Put the scramblers in the right order, orient the scramblers correctly, put in the right plugs, do it exactly the way the sender has it. In other words, have the computer as the sender, have the receiver's computer to be exactly like the sender's computer. Then you read the data. You get from Morse code or radio waves, you get the letter C. You press the button C, and a certain letter is going to light up. That letter is going to be the plain text. That's exactly. So the computer is kind of symmetric. What you press in, if you press a C and the Z letter goes on, that means if you press it, if in the receiving end, if you press a Z, the C letter would come in. Okay, so it goes backwards and forwards. Okay, that was that mirror thing. That's what it is. Okay, how to get the message. Get the letter by radio waves, press the key, see which light goes on, go back to step 1. Okay, so this is the way the Germans were communicating with each other. The main thing was to get the scramblers in the right orientation and position. Okay, now, I have to tell you something. I lied to you. Okay? I didn't think I would get a very large crowd had I said Marian Rosowski was the one who broke the Enigma code, and Turing didn't really break it, right? Because no one would come for Marian Rosowski, okay? But it turns out like this, okay? And there's a long history to this, and it's a very interesting history. This book, this ton, it's called The Code Breakers, Comprehensive History of Secret Communications from Ancient Times to the Internet. It's an excellent book. Turns out like this. The Allies, already in the 30s, had stolen Enigma machines. They had stolen it. They once bombed a U-boat. They got into the U-boat. The calendar was already destroyed, but they were able to get the machine. And with the machine, they de-engineered it. They reverse engineered it. They saw how the different scramblers worked. They saw how the wires were connected. They were amazed by it. Okay? So the British and the French already had these Enigma codes, had the Enigma machines. Okay? They just didn't know, they didn't have the calendars. Okay? But they had it. When they gave it to the Poles, okay? And the Poles were working on it. And you have to understand, the Poles were the first victims of, not the first, but of the Nazis. Anyways, they were working on it. So you had Marian Rojewski, Jelzy, Rozyski, Henryk Żygalski. Whatever, you have to pronounce the names right, otherwise not good. They broke the code. I'll tell you how they broke the code, and then I'll explain to you what Turing's addition was. It was like this. Since the early 30s, they already knew how the machine was used, how the scramblers worked. They got it from the French, who stole it from the Germans. The French and the English were not able to do anything with that information. They couldn't do anything then. Okay? Eventually, the Poles taught the French and the English how they figured it out. They figured it out. How did they break the Enigma? It goes as follows. They found a loophole. And the loophole goes like this. Look, you have thousands of Germans talking to each other on a daily basis. Okay? So the regular thing doesn't work, but you're getting thousands of messages coming in. And again, the British can listen to the messages, the French can listen to the messages, they can all gather these messages together. So there was a frequency analysis that you can do. Let me explain to you why. Because yes, the first time I press B, I get an F. The second time I press B, I get a Z. But everybody who presses B and B is going to get the same thing. So maybe some frequency analysis can be done, not with your message, but with everybody's messages the same. If everybody is on the same page, then everybody's messages would have that same type of frequency analysis, and maybe they can do something about it. The Germans realized that, and they put another feature to make sure that that doesn't happen. Here's what they want. Okay? Look, everybody wants to communicate with me. She wants to communicate with me, she wants to communicate, he wants to communicate with me. Here's what you do. Rather than all using the same order, okay, keep the plugs plugged in the way I tell you. Okay? And keep the rotors the way it says. But I want, this is the Germans talking to their generals, I want you to pick a new way of doing it. A new way of orienting the scramblers. So for example, if the scramblers say, if that day it says orient the scramblers P on one, S on the second, T on the third, here's what I want you to do. You want to communicate with me? Randomly pick 3 other letters. Okay? You pick 3 other letters. You pick 3 other letters. You pick 3 other letters. So let's say the 3 other letters was BGT. You're going to pick BGT. You're going to pick AZF. You're going to pick TRL. Okay? Then you have to tell the receiver what those letters are. So what's going to happen is you have to tell me what you're going to write. So in PST, which is the standard that everyone is going to use, you're going to write PST, okay? You're going to put the scramblers in PST. She's going to use BGT. So she's going to type in BGT, send it to me. Then I'm the receiver. I'm on PST. I'm on the original thing that the calendar says, and I get sent to me BGT. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to change my rotors now to BGT, and the rest of the message I'm going to listen with BGT. Great. She randomly picked BGT. She randomly picked ALZ. So I want to get a message from her. The message is going to be sent in PST. I'm PST, she's PST. She's going to type in ALZ. They're going to get some different letters. I'm going to get those letters, and I'm going to see where she's going to change ALZ, and I'm going to change mine to ALZ, and I'm going to get her. That way, every single person communicating with someone else is going to have a different frequency analysis. Remember, let's go through that again. If everybody used the same orientation of the scrambler, then there'd be a lot of information, and we can use frequency analysis. But if everybody communicates with everybody else and tells them, okay, here's my, then you tell them in the regular scrambler, you tell them, I'm going to use BGT, I'm going to use ALZ, I'm going to use PXY, then there's not going to be this common mass of communication, right? Because everybody's speaking a different, everybody's scramble is different. Now, we have to communicate, so the first three things of any communication will be, tell me what to change my scrambler to. Okay, so again, let's just do it one more time. She wants to communicate with me, so she's going to write to me in the classic thing that's in the calendar. She's going to write to me, I randomly choose BGT, so she's going to write BGT, and she's going to send me the code of BGT. Okay, and I'm reading her message and only her message. I'm going to read the BGT. I'm going to change my scrambler, and the rest of the message I'm going to read in her thing. That way, everybody has a separate scrambler. She won't be able to communicate with her because she didn't get it. Everyone will be able to communicate with me because I will change it to that way. Okay. Now, the Germans realized that this might cause a mistake. So what they did was as follows. Let's say she wants to communicate with me with BGT. So the Germans said, you know what? They don't want any mistakes. So they say, type in BGT twice. So she wants to send me a message. Here's what she does. She opens up her calendar. The calendar says, set up the orientations PST. Very good. Now she wants to send it to me. She randomly picks the word BGT. She sends it BGT, BGT. She gets out the light sequence for that. She sends that. Okay? I, the receiver, know what the calendar says. I start off my rotors with that. I receive 6 letters. Okay? And the 6 letters are, I see they're BGT, BGT. Okay? I receive this BGT. I set my thing to BGT. I then get the rest of her message. I type it in. I get the rest of the message. That's the way it goes. Okay, but the Poles knew about this. They knew about this double thing. They typed it in double. Had the Germans did it with just once, it wouldn't have worked. Now, what they were able to do is set up a computer. They were able to set up a computer that basically said, look, if I have this light, and this light, and this light, and I know that the first dot is the same as the fourth, BGT, BGT, BGT. B and B are the same. G and G are the same. The first thing is going to be the same as the fourth. The second thing is going to be the same as the fifth. The third thing is going to be the same as the sixth. Okay? Then they can try all possibilities of what the scrambler is. And they'll able to. Okay? So basically what they did was they had the computers go through all the possibilities. Again, they saw what the scramblers are made out of. And they were able to try all the possibilities. Let's just think, it's 26 times 26 times 26. There are 17,000 possibilities. Once they broke that, and they see, oh, the B, if you press B, you're going to get out that, whatever. They were able to do that. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit quicker. So the sender would send the change the scramble orientation through BST and send the message. Okay, I explained that. Okay, the main point is that BGT was sent twice. The PST orientation. BGT goes to HY, FJK. So what they wanted to know is, if I get an H out here, what orientation do I still have that the second time it comes around I'm going to get an F? And if I get a Y over here, what orientation am I going to get a J? And if I get a W here, what orientation am I going to get a K? They were able to figure out the original orientation. And they were able to break it. The Poles made a computer to search through all 26 by times 26 times 26 possible starting orientation, gives H and then the 3 characters letter and F. They were able to figure out. Problem, there are 6 possible orders of scramblers. They didn't know how the scramblers were ordered. Okay, so here's the way the Poles solved the problem. Have 6 different computers. This is in the late 30s. Have 6 different computers figure this out. Okay, so they had, again, there are 3 times 2 times 1 permutations of the orientation of the scramblers. 123, 213, 312, etc., etc. They had each one of those different possibilities running on a different thing until they got it. Okay, solution, have 6 computers running the search for each order. They were able to figure out the original PSD orientation. From there you can figure out everything else. They were able to figure out everything else. So this extra defense of the Germans, they wanted to defend from frequency analysis by having everybody using a different orientation, but they screwed up by having the person send it twice to make sure that there's no error. Okay. Okay. In 1938, things got harder. Let me explain to you why. The Germans added 2 scramblers. There were 3 scramblers. Every machine had the same 3 scramblers. Every machine, including the ones that the Germans and the English and the French stole. Okay? In 1938, things got a little bit harder. They added 2 other scramblers. Okay, so now there are 5 scramblers, and you have 3 slots to put them in. Okay? So there are now 60 possible ways of putting the scramblers in. Again, each one could be one of 26 times 26 times 26 possibilities, but you have 60 possibilities. The Poles didn't have 60 computers. Okay? The Poles didn't have 60 computers, so they were stuck. So before the war ended, before the war started, they flew these people to England to teach. The Poles went to fly to England to teach the French and the English what they have. Okay? And they explained to them the problem that they had. In September of 1939, Poland was occupied. They couldn't do anything. This Marian, I think, spent the war in England. Okay. So comes Bletchley Park. Bletchley Park is the secret place where Turing was working. Okay. And they had more than 6 computers, and they were able to do things. Okay. Now, let me tell you some other tricks that they used. Okay. First of all, most of the people in the army communicating were men. Okay, so they told them, pick up 3 letters randomly. So what do men have on their mind? Their girlfriend. So they picked CIL. A lot of them picked the same number, CIL. CIL for Sylvia. Okay, so a lot of them picked Sylvia or something like that. Or typical men, they, you want 3 letters, ADS, the first 3 letters of the computer. And they were sending ADS and ADS or QWE, the first 3 letters. And they were saying QWE, QWE. Men are not that creative to pick, a different thing every time. So these are some of the tricks that the English tried. They say, okay, we're getting a certain pattern here. We're seeing a lot of Sylvias and a lot of QWEs. So maybe we could try that. Also, they had more computers to try, so they were learning from that. Okay. Okay, some other tricks they were learning, namely, the Germans insisted that the order of the scramblers never have any scramble in the same place. So if you have a 532, then the next day it could not be 431 or 152 because the 3 would be the same and the 2 would be the same. So the Germans made them mix it up. Well, because of that, they learned that there were fewer possibilities. So it wasn't 60 possibilities, it went down to 48 possibilities. Here's one more trick we'll talk about. At 6:05, in a very German way, the German government would send what the weather was supposed to be. Okay? So they would send a secret message to all their U-boats telling them what the weather was supposed to be. Well, the word weather definitely shows up in the weather report, or as they call it, the weather report. Okay? So what they did was they used some frequency analysis and say, okay, I need 6 letters that look like the word WT. So they search through the scrambled code to find something that matches up to the word weather. And with that, they were able to find out what the original setting of the scramblers were. So that's very cool. Okay, what did Turing do after the war? So anyways, he saved a lot. There's a lot of moral issues discussed. It's discussed in this movie. For example, you know that a U-boat is coming to a certain ship and it's going to blow up the ship and kill 1,000 people. But if you tell the ship, hey, get the hell out of there, the Germans are going to know that you broke their code, and they're not going to use the code anymore. So you can't do that. You have to let the 1,000 people get killed rather than let the Germans know that you broke the code. And there are reports from the end of the war, the Germans had no idea that they broke the code. it worked. The Germans had no idea that the Enigma was broken, and so they used it till the very end. Okay, one of the things that he finished in the 50s, so again, in the 30s he proved the limits of computers. In the 40s he saved the Western world using some fancy computers. And in the 50s he was working with morphogenesis. Let me explain to you what morphogenesis is. Boys and girls, sometimes boys and girls get together and they make zygotes. Whatever. I don't want to get into it. Professor Thurm is here. I don't want to talk that language. And the amazing thing about zygotes is it's a fertilized egg. So you have a cell, it breaks apart into two. It has the same DNA. Then it breaks apart into four. Each one has the same DNA. It breaks apart into 8, 16, etc., etc. Okay. But an amazing thing happens after a while. Each cell starts off looking exactly alike with the same information. And yet one cell becomes a brain cell and the other cell becomes a foot cell. Okay? And one cell becomes a nail and the other cell becomes a heart cell. Okay? How does that happen? If every single cell has the same information, how does it differentiate? So this is a branch of biology that's very interesting. Morphogenesis. Okay? Morpho, shape. Genesis, the beginning of shape. How do you get the beginning of shape? And he worked with this and he came out with papers and he came out with papers and he came out with conclusions, differential equations, etc., to solve this. But here's the shocking thing. You ready? He was able to get real results before DNA was broken. DNA was broken in the late, in 55, 56. He was able to do this before he knew that in the nucleus there is information, but he didn't know what the information was like. So he was getting some interesting information like that. Here's the way babies come. There's where babies come from. We'll talk about that. I just want to talk about the end of his life. He committed suicide. Supposedly committed suicide. He didn't leave a note. And he committed suicide a very poetic way. His favorite movie, Snow White. Of course, what else is there? Okay? And Snow White dies. Snow White is given a poisoned apple. So he ate a poisoned apple. And he died. Okay? This is an amazing biography of him, Alan Turing, the Enigma. The library has this book. It's an excellent book. It's worth reading. It's really an excellent book. He says he committed suicide. Turing's mother was alive when he died, and she wrote a biography of him, and she writes at the end that he did not commit suicide. He was just working with biology, and he was working with plants to get these morphogenesis things, and some of the things he was working with was poisonous, and he accidentally ate an apple that he didn't realize was poison. So she wrote that. People argue whether or not he committed suicide or not. Recently, they're leaning to he did not commit suicide. He didn't leave a note. The reason why he was committing suicide is he was arrested for homosexuality, and what they did was they injected him with hormones, and it was extremely painful. But the injections had already stopped, so it's not clear why he would commit suicide anyways. So it's an argument of whether he committed suicide or not. But he's definitely an interesting character and interesting things. Here's some of the things that I used. Anyways, you have 1 minute for questions. So I'm sorry, I got to run.
I'm not sure. You said this. What did he bring to the table?
Okay, so he brought a lot of things, but he wasn't a lone man. As contrary to the way the movie does, there were a lot of people working in it. Some of the things that he brought was the power, the more computers and more powers to the computers. And he did some of the analysis, the mathematical analysis, to lower the numbers of things you have to search for. But again, the Poles already had the bombas, B-O-M-B-E. They were the bombs, the computers, that's what they call it.
Professor, you mentioned the plug board where the Germans could substitute two letters for one another.
Right.
What is the maximal number of such wires that could be
They
inserted?
used 12. So you have 26 choose 2 or something. You have 26 choose 12 or something like that. And you can put in a lot more. That was amazing.
Wrote it as a permutation.
Orders of permutation. Anything else? It's a pleasure.
Just to stop, we
We really have to stop now. You press the red button. There's another speech now, and I got to get moving because otherwise we're